Hello everyone, this video is for you if you are sitting your GCSE Latin exam with OCR in 2025 or 2026, and if you're struggling to learn the set text that you are doing for the literature exam. I'm going to focus on Virgil Aeneid I because a lot of schools have made that selection, but if your school hasn't chosen the Virgil, the same techniques that I go through here can be applied to your text. My name is Emma Williams and I was a Latin teacher in schools for 21 years, and about 3 years ago I stepped away from the chalk face and I'm now a full-time tutor. My website is on the slide there. So let's make a start. I'm going to teach you two methods that focus on the two key things that you need in order to prepare for any tests that your teacher might set you and for the exam. Firstly, you need to learn the English translation off by heart, and secondly, you need to gain confidence in how that relates to the Latin version of the text. So let's focus first of all on learning the English translation off by heart. You might be thinking at this stage, there's no way I can do that, but I promise you, you can. If you're feeling overwhelmed by it, it's simply because you don't know how to do it. And I am going to show you how, so stay with me. The technique that I'm going to show you is called the first letter technique, and it's used by actors to learn their lines. We're going to look at just the first few lines of this very first section of the Virgil. You'll notice I use colour coding, which I think is one of the useful methods of helping students to understand how the English relates to the Latin. But it's not the only method, and I will come back to another one later in this video. But learning the English translation first of all, you will need a pen and a piece of paper or a notebook, and it absolutely must be pen and paper. You can't use your phone, your tablet or your laptop for this, purely because research shows that what you write with your hand is kind of better at embedding in your long-term memory. So the very process of writing itself helps. And don't worry, we're not going to be doing any extensive writing, so there's no need for a phone or a tablet or a laptop. So pen and paper, and we're going to write down the first letter of each word in the English translation. We're going to include punctuation, and we're going to include capitals, because all of those will act as a prompt for our memory, which is what we're creating. As we write these things down, we're going to say the whole word. And actually, if you are alone or it's appropriate, you're not going to be disturbing anyone, actually saying it out loud is particularly powerful. Obviously, if you're in a library or you've been asked to work in silence, that's not going to work. But it's just worth you knowing that when you're at home and you can do what you like, it's worth doing. So here I go. I'm going to start learning from the first line. There was an ancient city which Tyrian settlers inhabited. So as I wrote the letter, I said the word. So that's part of the learning process. Notice capitals and punctuation included. The exception to that is I haven't included the brackets around which. That word is purely there to make it make sense in English. There's no word for it in the Latin, which is why I've put it in brackets, to help you with what's going on with the Latin. You don't need to include those in your letters. It's just going to make it look confusing. Second line, Carthage, opposite Italy and the far distant mouth of the Tiber. So you continue in that vein. Now, if this is your first sighting of the text, you've literally never laid eyes on it before and your teacher's just gone, go off and learn that, or you want to get ahead, so you're making yourself learn it, you might want to stick with just those two lines, yeah, and repeat before you go any further. I'm going to carry on for the purpose of demonstrating to you what we're doing. Rich in resources and most formidable in the practices of war, one which Juno is said to have cherished more than all other lands, valuing even Samos the less. So that's definitely the most that you would perhaps want to do in one chunk. What you would then do is focus on those letters and see what you can remember. So this is what you would have written down, and never ignore the Latin. Even though we're focusing on learning the English translation at this point, and that's a priority, you want to always have the Latin in the back of your mind. So if you get stuck on the letters, first thing to do is actually look at the Latin and just see. You never know if it gives you a prompt. It may not. You may have to check your answers, check the translation, and that's fine. So you would look at these letters and the Latin, and you would try and remember what the translation is. So there was an ancient city which Tyrian settlers inhabited. Carthage, opposite Italy. Oh, if I pause there, I'd go down to here. Oh yeah, contra Italiam. Opposite Italy and the far distant mouth of the Tiber. Rich in resources and most formidable in the practices of war. One which Juno is said to have cherished more than all other lands, valuing even Samos the less. So you use the letters as a prompt, and you keep repeating that process, glancing at the Latin, because hopefully that might help, and it all helps to fix it in your mind. And you want to repeat until you can reel off that translation with absolutely no hesitation whatsoever. What should happen quite quickly is that you have gained huge confidence and that you are able to reel off the translation while looking at the Latin. So you'll be able to see there was an ancient city which Tyrian settlers inhabited, Carthage opposite Italy and the far distant mouth of the Tiber, rich in resources and most formidable in the practices of war, one which Juno is said to have cherished more than all other lands, valuing even Samos the less. So once you've got to this point where you are comfortable with a chunk of the translation and you feel more ready to start focusing on how it relates to the Latin, then again, if you don't have access to something like this, a really powerful tool is Quizlet, and you can use my free resources on there. So Quizlet is what we're going to use to help you with our second method of learning, which is gain confidence in how the English translation relates to the Latin version of the text. So you can either just copy this down and literally type it into the internet and this will bring up my folders on Quizlet, or you can open up Quizlet and search for me. So my username is Latin Tutor E. Williams, and then if you go into my folders and find the GCSE OCR 2025-2026, so make sure you get the right board, OCR, and the right years, and you will find the Virgil text in there divided into, I think it's 6 sections. So you can use that to test yourself once you've learned the English translation. So once you've used that first letter technique to get some basic confidence, you can then test yourself using Quizlet. So you have small chunks of the Latin. Here we've got Urbs Antiqua Fuit, and I think that means there was an ancient city. Ta-da! And I'm correct. So simply using those flashcards to test yourself just like you would anything else on Quizlet. It's really, really good and really powerful. And in fact, what you will actually find is that especially if your teacher hasn't presented you with the text in a colour-coded format, or if your notes are really confused or you're just in a bit of a mess, Quizlet can actually be the place to start. So remember, our 2 key things was to learn the English translation off by heart and then gain confidence with how it maps onto the Latin. You can do the whole thing on Quizlet. So you can literally ditch everything else if you want to and start with the Quizlet flashcards. You can use them to divide up the text for you, and you can write down the letters from the back of the flashcard, so from the English version. And again, just do as many as you'll feel confident with. Do say 3 at a time maybe, and then add in the next 3 until you've learnt the whole section. So a lot of my students actually use Quizlet as their starting point to do the letters, and they can sort of do the Latin and the letters all in one. And there's a lot to be said for that, because if you're thinking about what the Latin looks like from the beginning, that is useful. Not worrying about it, not fretting about whether you understand it or not, because hey, it's Virgil. You're being asked to do the equivalent of someone who's learning English and has only learnt English for a couple of years, and they get some Shakespeare shoved in front of them. It's going to be hard. So don't fret about understanding it in detail, just using it as a prompt, kind of recognise some of it, and just gaining confidence that way. So it's over to you to try my methods, and do let me know how you get on. I love hearing from students. So if you comment on this video or any of my other videos, I will see it, and I really like hearing from students that have found it useful. You can always find me via my website. There's ways of getting in touch listed on there. Very, very best of luck. Take care.